All right, the weekend can wait because first we sweat.
Ooh.
That's so you don't have to, of course. Thanks for joining us. She's Jesse, I'm Emerson.
We're going to get you ready for the weekend around the PGA. We're going to take a look at that. Plus, it's NHL opening face-off, but we're going to kick the tires and light the fires with our NBA panel first.
Hello to DK Live's Pierce Dietrich and DFS expert Adam Mancuda. Price check
Hello.
is...
What's
hello.
up, guys?
Hello
Oh, wow.
to both of you.
Hey.
Man, no one ever usually says
Yeah,
hello
says
back
hello
to
back.
us.
Okay.
Wow, you guys are nice.
Hey.
Price check is where it's at, though, gentlemen. Revenge narrative alert. DeMar DeRozan heads back to Toronto tonight. He's 7,300. Is that cheap for a guy in this situation, Pierce?
I guess that it's cheap if you buy into the revenge narrative. If you don't buy into the revenge narrative and you consider this is DeMar DeRozan, he hasn't done anything recently, then no, I don't think it is cheap at all. Full disclosure, I hate Roston, the guy. He's a jump shooter. He doesn't really take threes. And even if you look at that game where he exploded against Toronto, he didn't hit any threes. He had 14 rebounds. He averages 6. He had 11 assists. He averages 6 there. He just had a ridiculous game, and a lot of that was because they pretty much boat raced the Toronto right out of the gate. And I think that probably affected how much Kawhi Leonard played on him and how effective that matchup was. If this game was closer, I would imagine he's going to see a lot more Kawhi Leonard. He's not going to come anywhere near that type of ceiling.
Adam, you buying into the revenge narrative? 62 points against Toronto earlier this season.
Yeah, I absolutely am, especially with it being on his former home floor. I think he wants to put on a show. I think he'll get a warm reception as well. I certainly agree with a lot of his points, but I do think that in this situation, he's going to want to put on that show. And I think that he'll come out of the All-Star break a little bit refreshed here, have a chance to kind of regroup with the team, obviously, enjoy the time away from the league for a couple of days. But I definitely think he's going to put up his points. He'll probably contribute on the assists. He'll get some boards. I think he'll be aggressive tonight, especially, basically to show ownership, thanks so much for screwing me over with the contract and then shipping him out for Kawhi. I think it's going to be a big night for DeRozan.
All right, well, we also have Kawhi taking on his former team. Narrative Street, do you think he's going to be worth 9,400, Adam?
Yeah, I think that's a little high here tonight. I think that with the Raptors, again, they added Gasol to that lineup right before the trade deadline was over. I think obviously he'll steal some of that thunder there in terms of some of the rebounds, some of the assists. He's a playmaking center, obviously. I think they're very deep. If they get a lead in this game, much like down here the stretch here, they're going to try to rest Leonard a little bit. But again, I think he's going to want to put on a show. I just think that price is just a little too high. Maybe he'll try to do a little too much to kind of, outperform DeRozan tonight. So I just think it's a little too high, but I think he'll also have a pretty good night.
All right, where are you going on this one, Pierce?
Yeah, I'm pretty much on the same page. I don't think he's going to have a bad game. I think he will have a pretty good game, but again, the price is just way too high. And if you're going to spend that much, it makes more sense to go up a little bit further and get someone who's more of a sure thing, someone who won't have a letdown game. And I don't believe he'll have a letdown game. A lot of people were burned by him January 3rd when they thought revenge game number 1 was going to work out, but Toronto just played poorly. They got boat raced, like I mentioned, in the first quarter. They were already down 20 points. That game was over. That really affected probably the way Kawhi went. Kawhi shot really well in that game, but it was pretty much over, and he ended up only shooting, I think, 13 times, so well below his average. If this game stays close, I could see him easily getting 40, 50 fantasy points, but 45, 50 fantasy points, that's not going to get it done. And we've really only seen him go nuts once, and that was in a double overtime game. And sure, if this goes to double overtime, cool, then you got it right, but you can't predict a double overtime game.
All right, Kemba Walker's coming off a terrible shooting performance against the Magic last Thursday. I believe 4 for 20.
Ew.
That's disgusting. He's 9,300 tonight against the Wizards. How much do you like his chances to rebound and be worth the money tonight, Pierce?
Well, I have to admit, he was my lock of the night that night.
That's okay.
So.
It takes a real man
hate to see it.
Be honest.
Okay, but saying that, I think if you get in the habit of not playing guys because they have one bad night, then you're probably not going to do very well in fantasy because everyone has bad nights. It's the NBA. Everybody gets blown out. He couldn't shoot. They got blown out of that game after beating Orlando basically every time they played. It's going to happen. You got to forget about it and move on. And if you look at what he's done recently since Cody Zeller's been there, his usage is over at 33, 34%. He's playing almost 38 minutes a game. Now, Satoransky's not really a bad point guard to match up against, but as we mentioned the other night on the show, we probably look too much into matchups. What we should look at is this is the highest scoring game on the slate. He has high usage. He's playing a lot of minutes. He's playing well. Shouldn't overthink this. I like Kemba a lot. Again, hopefully it works this time.
Adam, how much do you like Kemba? Because before that 21 DK fantasy point night, he had 5 straight of at least 53.
Yeah, I don't mind him tonight, especially given the child factor here. Sadareski, I think, just came back from personal leave. His wife just had a kid. Maybe the guy's not sleeping. Who knows? Does he have a baby nurse? We got to check into these things before lineups lock. But in all seriousness, I do think Kemba bounces back here. Maybe he was looking a little bit ahead towards the All-Star break. Being in Charlotte, who's going to defend this guy? Like, no one on the Wizards is going to be able to stop this guy driving to the basket. Everyone has those off nights. He's really the only capable scorer on the team currently. I think he'll bounce back. Give me Kemba wherever I can get him tonight. Tonight might be the lock of the night for him rather than the last night.
Guys, Luka Doncic has at least 45 DK points in 5 of his last 6 games. He's 9,100 tonight against the Nuggets. Do you think he's going to be worth paying up for, Adam? He is questionable.
Yeah, that's my biggest concern and I haven't really seen any final words, so hopefully we'll get some here in the next hour or so. But that's my biggest concern: is he actually going to play? Now, he did play obviously in that All-Star rookie sophomore World U.S. Challenge, whatever you want to call it. I would certainly pay up if he is active. I would certainly pay up. Again, the Dallas Mavericks basically shipped everyone out, right before the trade deadline. They don't have too many guys there. Obviously, Porzingis isn't there. He's not playing. I love Luka. He could do it in all aspects of the game. He's going to give you some defensive stats. Obviously, the assists, rebounds, and points. I certainly would pay up for him, but obviously, just has to be a last-second call. Make sure he's active tonight.
Yeah, I mean, who knows when he suffered that injury. This is his first game back from All-Star break. So, Pierce, what do you think?
Coming out of All-Star break, carrying the questionable tag is strange and a little unnerving, and I don't really like him to begin with. I mean, you mentioned 45 fantasy points a game, but at the price tag, that's really not the greatest place to be. Sure, it's a decent floor, and that's a pretty good game, but at 9,000 or more, I'm really looking for a guy that has a little bit more upside. We haven't seen that from him. I know he's a young player, and he hasn't played as many games, just a rookie, but I believe he's only got 3 games over 60 fantasy points, and 2 of them almost came back-to-back. He should probably have a good game if he's healthy, but I don't think it's worth the risk, and you're not going to be able to get the upside from him.
Guys, we also just found out Karl Anthony Towns has been ruled out for tonight's game. So that's kind of huge.
Yep, it's big against the Knicks.
Yeah, so fantasy impact of that one. I mean, what are you thinking, Pierce?
I'm looking right now.
Yeah.
So I'll let you go.
Okay. Hey, Adam, what are you thinking?
Thanks for the heads up.
With Karl
I'm thinking
Anthony
that it's a
Towns
good time to rest him. I mean, the Knicks are terrible, as we all know. They're tanking for Zion, obviously. So it's a good time to rest him if he's not 100%. So I would think Taj Gibson, assuming he's good to go, would probably have a big night as well. I think obviously the other guys, in the lineup will obviously step up for him. Again, very interesting though. Obviously he was involved over the weekend. So very interesting there as well. But I guess if you're not gonna be 100%, best time to rest him against the Knicks.
Pierce.
How about Teague and Saric? Teague's usage has been pretty high, and Saric should get plenty of minutes down low. The last time that Towns didn't play, or I believe it was Towns. No, it was Wiggins. But Saric has played pretty well, filling in for people. Yeah,
Saric has played actually a ton of minutes recently. He's obviously seen the uptick. They've obviously also announced that he's basically going to stay in that starting lineup. So he's not a bad call.
Yeah, and he's been ruled out with a concussion, so he is entering concussion protocol. So we'll see how that works out.
We'll keep an eye on that. Another reason to have the DK Live app. Let's go one more in price check, though, guys. Andre Drummond's been a beast lately, scoring at least 50 DK points in 5 straight games. He's $9K tonight against the Hawks. Will he be worth the price tag this time, Pierce?
Yes. You look at the last time he played the Hawks, 49 points in just 29 minutes. That's some pretty efficient production. You play anyone against the Hawks, and if you definitely play an Andre Drummond who is absolutely crushing at the moment, you definitely play him here. Now, the Hawks are actually worse against other positions, but that doesn't mean they're good against centers because they're the 10th worst against centers. This is a great spot for Drummond here, and what I really like about Drummond is he gets steals and blocks, and that means it's probably going to secure his floor, and on a really good night, he's going to hit that ceiling and go off. And in a high-paced game against a bad team like the Hawks, there's definitely going to be steals there. There's definitely going to be block opportunities. He's one of my favorite plays of the night.
Adam, do you expect the same kind of efficiency from Drummond that he produced the last time he played the Hawks?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, he's totally right here. I think my only hope here is that the Hawks keep this game close somehow as we kind of get into the fourth quarter. So you're going to see more time from him than the, under 30 we saw the last time out. If he could get into the mid-30s range, potentially even higher, he's going to have a huge, huge night. I love his play. He's definitely one of the considerations for lock of the night. He's going to get you those boards. He's going to dominate the glass, work well with Blake Griffin. Love the play.
Alrighty, you two gear up for showdown picks. At the end of the show, we got PGA pin placement with the usual suspects next.
Hey, I'm Tara Lenizak here with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. Well, we still aren't sure where Bryce Harper is going to end up, but we now know where he won't. The Washington Nationals are officially waving the white flag when it comes to re-signing their slugger. Nats owner Mark Lerner told NBC Sports Washington that they haven't heard from Harper and his agent Scott Boras in months, and they have moved on. Before the end of the 2018 season, the Nats offered Harper a 10-year, $300 million deal, but the terms of the deal didn't entice the 26-year-old All-Star. So, Philadelphia and San Francisco remain in contention, but we still can't rule out the Padres. According to the MLB Network's John Heyman, San Diego is meeting Friday to see if they can make it 2 for 2 on this winter's megastars. It's hard to know how serious this info is, so we'll have to continue to wait to see who will scoop up the prized free agent as spring training starts to heat up.
Another day, another round of the WGC Mexico Championship, basically in the books. So we're bringing in our golf panel, DK Live's Jeff Ulrich and Reed Fowler.
Alrighty, you two. Let's play some PGA pin placement, please. We're through just about 2 rounds, as Jesse just mentioned.
Just about.
And now we're making you guess where the following players will finish when all is said and done down in sunny, warm Mexico. First up, Jeff. Where do you think Rory McIlroy finishes, huh?
I mean, we've seen this story from Rory before. He puts in a big round, he gets everyone excited, and then he kind of fades off of it and doesn't get the job done. He's got 1 win over the past 2.5 seasons, essentially. And it just looks like it's going to be the same story. I mean, he got passed by Dustin Johnson today. He's still in T3 or whatever, but honestly, I don't really have my hopes up. Again, we've just seen this from him so long. So many times now his putting isn't quite clicking. It's okay this week so far. The ball striking's okay. He's really good off the tee, but he's getting surpassed by Dustin Johnson on approaches. I'll just say he ends up with a T4.
Reed, he's currently in 3rd place through 15 holes on his 2nd round, 2 behind Dustin Johnson. Where does he finish the weekend?
Yeah, I think obviously the best place he can finish is winning this tournament. Jeff's right, it does kind of scare you a little bit just in his past and his recent form, but I think a lot has changed since then, right? Obviously committing to the PGA for Rory's schedule and not necessarily going from a different obligation to different obligation. I think that concentration needs to be there, and this is really his first test. If we like him for Augusta, we like him for these tournaments coming down the stretch, this is a time that he does it, and I think he knows that. I think he has to do that. So I think he can win this. Look, Strokes-Gained approach, he's coming in at 15th right now in the middle of this round. He was towards the beginning where we saw him rattle off a few birdies where he was first. He was first in putting and approach. I think obviously with this course being a little bit tough on the greens, pin placements obviously being tough on a Saturday, on a Friday and also on a Sunday, it's going to be tough. But I think at best he obviously wins this. At worst, right outside the top 5, so around 6th.
Reed, what about DJ here?
I mean, yeah, he could win this, right? Woo! I mean, we saw he already won it once, and he's leading right now. That's the talent of DJ. He's the guy that kind of flew under the radar here. Same thing with Rory. You look at his stats, and his Strokes-Gained approach, he's 5th coming into this day and 1st in putting, and that's really the 2 metrics that you like and you want to see here. And, you know, final scoring and the round 4 scoring, when you look at all of his statistics, he's top of the line. His scoring average is there. I mean, guys like JT and Rory can potentially surpass them. We see what JT can do on Sundays. But Dustin Johnson is one of the best in the world, and he's proving it right now that all these guys in this elite field, he's rattling off these birdies. Best is a number 1. At worst, his putting has eluded him a little bit this season so far. So if that happens, I can see him falling just inside the top 10, like 8th or 9th at worst. But he's playing too well right now. So I think he can win this whole thing.
Yeah, those of us who have him in our lineup must feel pretty good. Jeff, DJ, where do you think he finishes?
I mean, he's not going to finish T9. The worst he finishes is runner-up. He's top 5 in off the tee and approach stats right now. And when DJ hits the ball like that, it's almost impossible to stop. I mean, he's in the lead. I'd be absolutely shocked if he didn't win, quite frankly. I mean, look, he could get caught. We've seen him blow it on Sundays before. But like I said, second place is his floor for me right now. Maybe that's a little bit, exaggerating, but I'd be shocked if he finished worse than second, quite frankly. I think he's going to win.
Reed, where is Tiger going to finish?
I got him just outside the top 5, so around 6. Look, he really played well. He shot -5, I believe, today, and he's up there in the top 10. So I got him around 6th place. This is an elite field, and Tiger is obviously getting back to becoming one of the more elite in the world. But these guys like JT, Rory, DJ, even Brooks to an extent, obviously he's not playing well. These guys are way too good. And a guy like Tiger, he has to have his best stuff. And coming in right now, strokes gained approach, he's at 13th. In this tournament so far. So the irons, which is really his like bread and butter, not exactly the best in terms of this field. So I got him at 6th. His putting has not been that great. It's still obviously pretty good, but I got him at 6th at best, just outside top 10 at worst.
All right, Jeff, we are talking Tiger Woods here, not Leishman.
Pretty much the same take as Reed. I think you'll just see a natural progression. Obviously it's a smaller field, but I think he'll crack the top 10. His off the tee play has been spotty the first 2 rounds again, which is kind of sucks because it's regressing. It was actually really good last week. He's lost a lot of strokes off the tee the first two rounds. Maybe it's just because he doesn't know the course, but his putting's actually been really good. He's lighting it up on the greens today, actually, plus 3.5 strokes putting. But I don't think he's going to catch DJ or anything like that. I think a T8 is like I said, it's a natural progression. His game's getting a little sharper. Still got some things to work on.
I will say this though, with Tiger, he did change some of his equipment before. He had, I think, a little loft in the 3-wood, and we saw that first drive on the first day. He duck hooked it out of bounds, right? So when a guy like Tiger potentially, make some kinks and some changes to his equipment. One thing to know about Tiger, the strokes gained approach on the weekends, round 3 and 4 of the last 24 rounds, he's number 1. So if it stays the trend on what he's doing on the weekends of the last 6 tournaments or so, hopefully he gets to that place that Jeff and I are talking about, and just outside the top 5. Because in this field, the first time he's getting out there, and if he gets a top 5 or around that top 6 range, it's pretty good for him.
Alrighty, what about Gary Woodland, Jeff? He's T28 right now.
Yeah, Gary looks like he's having a little trouble with the irons this week. He's lost actually quite a few strokes. Probably some kind of just hasn't adjusted to the course, the altitude. He's killing it off the tee, which is nice to see. That's usually what he does. One of the best players, strokes gained off the tee. But, unless he dials it in for a round, I don't think he's going to make a big move. I think he's in T27 or T25 right now. You could, like I said, if he dials it in for a round, he could maybe crack the top 20. But I'll say he probably stays around where he is. His game isn't quite there. It's not quite firing with the irons. So T22, I don't know.
Reed, what do you think?
Yeah, Gary Woodland is a guy that I think a lot of us were on earlier, and we talked about it yesterday, that his ownership was at 30% in GPP, so he's burning a lot of people right now. He's at 29th. I think to Jeff's point, that's where he stays. If you look at his rounds, they've been up and down, where he's gotten a lot of birdies, but he's gotten a lot of bogeys and others, right, the doubles, and he's just not putting these rounds together. So if those stop, if those bogeys or worse stop, and he just equalizes at par, he's still off. His off the tee game is saving him quite a bit, but approach and putting, he's like 66th and 39th respectively for those 2 stats right now and over the first 2 rounds. So even though he's number 1 in this tournament strokes gained off the tee, he's just not putting these good rounds together. He's not having good holes, and once he gets a birdie, he follows it up with a bogey or a double. So I got him at best, if he just does away with those bogeys and others, at maybe just inside the top, sneaking inside the top 20, but probably stays around 35th.
Finally, Reed, please tell us where you think Jordan Spieth finishes. Currently T39, +2 for the tournament, through 16 holes in the second round.
Yeah, best is probably 30th. 35th. This guy is there's a lot of stuff probably going on between the ears with Spieth. The worst he could finish is last. We saw what he's able to do, what he can get on one hole. We saw that yesterday or last week at Riviera. We got a 10 on one hole where he took 3 or 4 shots out of a bunker. We really don't know what's going on with Jordan Spieth. And yes, he's put a better round together today as opposed to the first round, but he was all over the place. Looks like a guy who hasn't really figured something out. And he's been one of the best in the world, but Jordan Spieth right now does not have his game, even remotely close to where he wants it, especially before Augusta. So at best, maybe a 35th, maybe around there. But at worst, he could finish kind of by where Leishman is. And no, all jokes aside, he's in that territory of potentially, if he doesn't get any birdies, finishing close to last place.
Leishman currently 5th to last. Jeff, speaking of Mark Leishman, where do you think Jordan Spieth finishes?
Really glad you guys brought him up. Look, I mean, Jordan Spieth, either he doesn't like the course, he hasn't figured the altitude out, or his game isn't there. And I think it's kind of a mix of all three right now. There's just not enough confidence for him to put it together, and I think it's seeping through to even the good parts of his game. His iron game looked like it was clicking for a few rounds there and some of his early starts. Now it's not clicking. The putting is up and down. Like, I don't have any high hopes for a high finish here. I don't really think he's adjusted well to the altitude either. So, yeah, I don't know, T50. He'll probably get passed by Leishman.
Oh, man. Great job, you guys.
You hope so.
Great job. Hockey Talk is after this break.
Hey, it's Adam Kaufman here with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. Columbus Blue Jackets have been the talk of the rumor mill, with everyone wondering if they would trade star winger Artemi Panarin before Monday's deadline. Well, today they made a deal, but it was to bring in talent rather than ship it out. Columbus acquired center Matt Duchene from Ottawa in exchange for 2 prospects and 2 picks. Senators will also send AHL defenseman Julius Bergman to Columbus. Sen's in full rebuild mode, and with Duchene on the last year of his deal, he wasn't looking to sign long-term anyway. 28-year-old Ontario native is on pace for his best season, has 27 goals, 31 assists in just 50 games. This could mean they'll pair Duchene with Panarin and gear up for a playoff run before one or both stars walk away in free agency. Jackets haven't won a playoff series in their 17-year history, so they gotta somehow get things going, right? This will be Duchene's 3rd team the last 2 seasons, but he won't have to travel far to join them. Columbus in Ottawa tonight, and he's expected to suit up against his old team for the Jackets. Awkward.
5-game slate in the NHL tonight. We have the world's friendliest Canadian here to help us choose between high-priced options. That would be Gary and Thorne.
No. Okay, that's Jeff Ulrich.
Oh. I thought we
I
said
am
friendly
shocked.
Canadian.
Wow.
Friendly Canadian.
Yes. You don't think I'm a nice guy, Emerson? Come on.
Come on, Emerson.
I just miss you. That's why I'm mean to you sometimes.
You'll pay for this. Anyway, this is why you're not Jeff's favorite, for the record. All right, NHL opening face-off. First off, we got to get your reaction to this morning's trade news. Matt Duchene was sent from the Senators to the Blue Jackets. What do you like about this trade? Do you like anything about it?
Well, I mean, it's hard not to like it, I guess, from a Blue Jackets perspective, because they're going for it. They're kind of on the cusp of the playoffs, and they have a pretty solid team. I mean, if you can get by like one elite team, you can get to the Stanley Cup. I mean, the East it's kind of heavy, top weighted, and you get like one upset and you're there, really. So realistically, I don't mind it. The problem is Matt Duchene's a free agent, right? So they're paying a lot. I mean, 2 first-round picks, a couple of young draft picks. Like, it's a high price for Matt Duchene. Now, if they re-sign him, that's different, because Matt Duchene's really good. He's lighting it up this year. He's looked really good, and outside of the Avalanche, like not playing second-line center, I think he's going to do well with the Blue Jackets. They got a great first line now with Pernian and Cam Atkinson. I mean, that's a top-notch line. That's like a top 10 line in the NHL. So I like it from that perspective. It's just, if you don't re-sign Matt Duchene, holy cow, did you just mortgage the future? So it's give and take, I guess.
Yeah, Duchene will be joining 2 of tonight's top wings. You got Cam Atkinson and Artemi Panarin. Atkinson $7,400, Panarin $200 cheaper against the Senators. Who do you like more?
Yeah, I mean, obviously these guys are pretty close. I mean, I think Panarin's the better player overall, but Cam Atkinson's more of a pure goal scorer. I'm going to take Cam Atkinson in this matchup from the simple fact that it's Matt Duchene's first game as a Blue Jacket. Usually in your first game, you're trying to set up your teammates. And maybe that's just like a narrative street, like hockey BS thing, but it does kind of ring true, right? I mean, you're trying to set up the guy who scores a lot of goals, and it's also going up against the Ottawa Senators. So I'll take Atkinson maybe for like a multi-goal game. I just think he's got a little bit better upside. We'll see how him and Pernin, gel together. It might take a little bit more time with a skilled player like that. So I'll go with Atkinson in this matchup. I just think like in this matchup against the Senators, where you could see 6 or 7 goals potentially, you go with the goal scorer, the more pure goal scorer anyway.
All right, the 2 highest-priced centers will be facing each other tonight. Nathan MacKinnon is $7,800 and Jonathan Toews is $7,500. Who do you think puts up the better fantasy performance tonight?
Yeah, you got to go with MacKinnon here. I mean, at least I think you do. I mean, it's just too tasty a matchup. I mean, I think it was a couple nights ago we were talking about the Blackhawks. They're just playing pond hockey right now, and they're giving up like 5 goals to the Red Wings. They're giving up 7 goals to the Sens, even though they beat the Senators. I mean, Nathan MacKinnon's coming off a pretty decent game against the Winnipeg Jets, who actually have a good defensive squad. And then the Avalanche have, wingers out there too, like a legitimate top 10, whatever power play, right? So to go up against the worst penalty kill in the league, or one of the worst penalty kills in the league, bottom 3. So all things considered, I'm taking MacKinnon here like 10 times out of 10. I mean, it's not a bad matchup for Taves either, because the Colorado Avalanche penalty kill isn't anything, to write home about either. But yeah, MacKinnon would be the two out of the person to target out of these two. The other thing with Chicago is you can always go dip down to that second line, get a little bit more value. Don't necessarily have to pay up for Taves every night.
Two defensemen near the top of the pricing are Jared Spurgeon, Jacob Trouba. Spurgeon, $5,700 against the Red Wings. Trouba will save you $100 against the Golden Knights. So who's the better pick and why here?
Yeah, the Trouba's the better player, in my opinion. He's also probably on the better power play, but I'm still picking Spurgeon. There's a couple reasons. Jets have been bad lately. Like they let me down last night or 2 nights ago. They're just not playing well. They're not confident. Maybe they missed Bafouin, I don't know, or Dustin. And then there's the matchup. I mean, it's the Las Vegas Golden Knights, right? Like they have one of the better penalty kills in the league, and they maybe haven't been like at the top of their game lately either. But it's still not the greatest matchup to pay up for Trouba. So I'll just go with Spurgeon. It's a far better matchup against the Red Wings. He's actually been playing really good too, like his last 10 or 20 games, getting a little bit more power play time over that span. The Wild are a little bit hit or miss from a power play perspective, but I'd take Spurgeon over Trouba in this one.
Marc-Andre Fleury will start against the Jets, who have lost 3 in a row. He's $7,800. Or you could go with Colin Delia, who's $100 less against the Avalanche. So, Jeffrey, who would you like to take?
I mean, you're taking your life in your own hands if you take Delia. I mean, it's that simple. It's not that he's like that bad a goalie either. It's just the team he plays on right now who just does not play defense, and they're just, like I said, getting in shootouts every night. Maybe he is bad too. I don't know. I mean, I'm not exactly like a goalie scout here, right? But I think Marc-Andre Fleury is actually in an interesting spot too, mainly because the Jets are not playing well. And like I said, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, people sometimes like to pick on them, but they're really not that bad a team. They're quite solid. I mean, Fleury's been solid most of the year. Maybe tailing off a little bit of late, but I don't mind going back to him here in this matchup. He'll be low owned. So if you ask me to pick against like one of these two players, I mean, I'm pretty much going to go with Fleury like every time, I think. So.
Okay, 10 out of 10.
Fair enough. Noted. Slate-approved pick. Who you got? I
mean, I hate to just be like the obvious guy, but like you have to play Matt Duchene tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the Ottawa Senators. It's like, they're a good matchup anyways, and now you've got the revenge narrative going. I don't know. I mean, I guess if you want to get fancy, just like maybe play the Columbus Blue Jackets second line, but like how do you not play 6,700 Matt Duchene playing alongside like 2 legitimate goal scorers on a decent team now, going up against his old team his first game? So it's got to be Matt Duchene.
Got to do it. Great work, Jeffrey. We're going to see you next week. NBA
Thanks.
Chaser Fade is next, right after Adam Kaufman updates us on the Pittsburgh Steelers.
The new league year in the NFL rapidly approaching, but the Steelers' turbulent offseason, that is already well underway. Adam Kaufman with NFL Network's Aditi Kinkhabwala. We love checking in with her on all things Pittsburgh. And Aditi, Le'Veon Bell won't be tagged, Antonio Brown will be traded, and Ben Roethlisberger isn't saying a word. Bell first. He's got his wish. Questions now, though, are will he wind up, where will he wind up, and will he get that big contract he's been seeking?
Well, he apparently is hoping for $50 million guaranteed.
Yeah, good luck.
Or $50 million, right, over the course of the first 2 years, or I don't know what exactly it is, but remember that he walked away from $14.5 guaranteed million this past year. Mm-hmm. So he's certainly hoping to recoup that money, and the reason, part of why he walked away from that is that he felt that he could get it. So we will see. I am somewhat skeptical that he will get the money that he wants, and I also am skeptical that he will find a fit that will lead to as much productivity as he had in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. Notice I'm being very careful in how I say all of this, because for all I know, I'll be covering Le'Veon Bell on a regular basis next year.
Right.
But here's the thing, the magic of this Steelers offense when Todd Haley was running it for 6 years, for whatever you want to say about Todd Haley, for 6 years, he had literally the most dynamic offense in the NFL, and he brought out something special in Antonio Brown, in Le'Veon Bell, and in Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger's the most successful run of Ben Roethlisberger's career in terms of accuracy and how quickly he got the ball out and numbers in general came under Todd Haley. And Antonio Brown, when Todd Haley met him, was really kind of a backup special teams player. He wasn't the star. He wasn't one of the top 2 receivers in the league. And Le'Veon Bell was the second-round pick at running back who was okay, and then suddenly turned into this unbelievably dynamic threat who used every single down in a variety of different ways, split out wide like a wide receiver. You know, like, these are all things that came from Todd Haley's mind, A, and then B, everybody made everybody else better. Mm-hmm. If a defense had to focus in on Antonio Brown, then that suddenly opened a heck of a lot of things for Le'Veon Bell. If a defense is completely committed in stopping Le'Veon Bell in this variety of ways that he's being used, well, Ben Roethlisberger was going to find Antonio Brown. And a lot of people ate. I mean, remember how Martavis Bryant was so successful? Sure. There was just, when you have that many different weapons used in that many different ways, everybody looks better. And now to see what will Le'Veon Bell be without a quarterback like Ben Roethlisberger and a receiver like Antonio Brown, because are there really that many teams that have a quarterback of that caliber and a wide receiver of that caliber, and also the money to sign Le'Veon Bell? I'm not so sure about that. So it'll be interesting to see what these players, the Steelers are about to say goodbye to arguably 2 of the best players at their position in the league. Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see what everybody does when they're separated.
The Brown divorce, though, that escalated quickly. So who do you think is the favorite to land him, and where's the best fit? I recognize those might be different cities.
You know, I've been told by people to watch San Francisco, to watch Philadelphia, to maybe even watch Green Bay. I think the Steelers would certainly like to see him in the NFC as opposed to the AFC. It'll be interesting. The thing here is, are teams willing to say, okay, Antonio Brown was X for 8 years, for 7.5 years, mm-hmm. and the last year has been an entirely different story. Are there mitigating circumstances? Is there a turn? Has he turned into a completely different person? What is that whole story? And from everything I've ever been told about anybody who has ever negotiated with Kevin Colbert, it is that the Steelers GM, Kevin Colbert, is an unfailingly honest person. And he will tell you the facts as he sees the facts. So it's certainly not that he's going to try to snooker anybody into believing that Antonio is somebody other than who he is. If you ask me my personal opinion, after having been around the guy for 7 years, I think that a new environment could be good for him. Look, he's the hardest working professional football player I have ever been around in my life. And I don't know that he was ever given an opportunity. This is a guy that has worked for every single opportunity that he's had. He works tirelessly. After practice, every day he'd be catching balls off the jugs machine. He works out multiple times a day. This is a guy, I remember looking at his notebooks. Every single year that he's been in the NFL, he takes notes. He's kept one notebook for each year. And he'll go home at night, and he's got 5 kids, but he'll go home and he'll highlight things that he's written in his notebook. And I remember Todd Haley, the previous offensive coordinator, once telling me a couple of years ago that Brown will, in a meeting, say something that Haley mentioned randomly a month ago or 5 weeks ago, and it'll blow Haley's mind. Like, how does he even remember that I said that? I don't remember that I said that. And it's because of that notebook. So again, I think that, you know, there's no way to defend the way that Antonio Brown has behaved this year. On the field, the Week 17 stuff, the not showing up, the not getting an MRI, not being at walkthrough, not being available to your teammates. There's no way to defend the other stuff. The driving 100 miles per hour, the throwing furniture out of a window, the threatening of multiple reporters, the disappearing at training camp. I mean, none of that is okay. But the question here is, if you get him in a different environment, if you get him with a group of people who make him feel appreciated and respected, if you kind of hit reset, will he go back to being the guy who always played with the biggest smile on his face? It'll be interesting to see what the Steelers want, but I'll tell you this. If I'm Kyle Shanahan or if I'm Doug Peterson, I'm taking a flyer on the guy. I really am.
Aditi, Roethlisberger has kind of flirted on and off over the last couple of years, at least, with retirement. Is this Big Ben's last hurrah?
Well, he said last year after Mason Rudolph was drafted that he expects to play 3 to 5 years. And at the end of this season, we certainly didn't hear him say anything about retirement.
Well,
so
maybe he sticks around for a little while.
You've got at least 2, maybe 4 left.
Aditi Kinkhabwala, thank you very much. Really appreciate the time.
Thanks so much for having me, Adam. I really do appreciate it.
Back to hoops. And with a few familiar faces, DK Live's Julian Edlow and Action Matt LaMarca from the Action Network.
Alrighty, we're chasing and fading, starting with the Raptors, who are favored by 7.5 tonight against the Spurs. Chase or fade? Toronto's going to cover this one, Jules.
I don't know what's so funny, but the Raptors have actually not been all that great covering the spread on the whole this season. They've gotten their wins, but in terms of against the spread numbers here, they're the third worst team in the NBA at 25, 33-1 against the spread. So DeMar DeRozan vowed that he would drop 50 in this game coming back to Toronto. They beat the Raptors in San Antonio the first time this season. I think that the Spurs have enough to stick around and cover this spread.
Matt, chase or fade? Toronto covers.
I'm going to chase the Raptors covering this spread, but I actually think that the more intriguing bet of the on this game is on the over. I really like the over in this contest tonight. If you look at the Spurs over the past 12 months, the over in those contests, their road games, that is, has gone 32-13-2. That's a 71% cover rate. And if you look at their numbers this season, when they're playing on the road, their offense is still really good. They're 4th in the league in offensive efficiency, but their defensive rating drops all the way to 28th. So they're just getting torched whenever they're playing outside of San Antonio. I do think that they score on Toronto, but I think that Toronto scores even more points. So I do think that they will cover this game, but I'm much more interested in betting on the over.
All right, Maddie. Wizards and Hornets have the highest projected total on tonight's slate, though. So I want you to chase or fade. These teams combined for over 232 points.
Yeah, I like the over here as well. I'm going to chase this. Last night was a bad one for overs coming out of the All-Star break. I believe 5 out of the 6 games went under. But if you look at bad teams in particular playing their first game after the All-Star break, it's typically pretty profitable to bet the over. 2 teams facing each other with losing records first game after the All-Star break, the over covers at 67.6% since 2005. So that's a pretty nice trend. Both of these teams definitely fit that mark. You know, the Wizards are clearly in mail-it-in mode at this point. Charlotte is just not a good team to begin with. So I think that there will be plenty of points and very little defense played in this contest.
Jules, chase or fade? These two combined for over 232 points.
Yeah, I'm chasing it with Action Matt here. Just not the right time of the season for the Wizards. They're clearly out of it. Terrible defensive team to begin with, and now they have no motivation coming out of this All-Star break. When these teams met at the end of December, the Wizards actually won the game, but it was 130 to 126. So, you know, whatever that is, 256 points there, so well over the 232 that we need in this game. I just think it's a really good spot for the over for a lot of the reasons Matt said, along with that first score that we got between these two teams this season.
Alrighty, the Magic have won 5 straight games and are only a half a game out of a playoff spot. They're favored by 8.5 tonight against the Bulls. So chase or fade, the Magic cover the spread, Julian?
I'll chase it. The Magic are playing really well. They're fighting for this division that's been a huge letdown with teams like Charlotte, Washington obviously doing terrible in that division, Miami, but Orlando was red hot before the break. They beat the Hornets 127 to 89. They beat the Pelicans 118 to 88. The Hawks 124 to 108. They beat the Bucks even though it was without Giannis. That game was still in Milwaukee, a tough game. Beat the Timberwolves by 10. So they've been running pretty hot. The Bulls are the Bulls. They are most likely going to be, tanking down the stretch here. So I think the Magic stay hot and cover this spread.
What do you think, Matt?
I'm going the other way.
Ooh.
I get that the Magic have looked impressive recently, but, go back through those results. Who cares that they beat the Hornets? Who cares that they beat the Pelicans without Anthony Davis? Who cares that they beat the Hawks? Like they're basically.
You know who's about as good as the Pelicans, the Hornets, and the Hawks? The Bulls.
That? That's true, but they're favored by 8 points. Come on, like I get that Orlando has looked impressive, but how are we saying that this team deserves to be favored by 8 over anybody? They're still, not a good team. I get that they're playing better and that they are, playing for playoff lives basically, but I'm just not at the point where I'm willing to back them. And I'm one of the only ones, by the way. Like, this game is getting pounded by the public and the sharps alike. Both seem to be on Orlando. So I could be totally wrong, but anytime there's like an overwhelming discrepancy in terms of, percentage of money being bet on a certain team, I like to go the other way because that's how Vegas makes money.
All right, Blake Griffin's over-under for tonight is 29.5 points. Chase Fade, Griffin is held under that mark against the Hawks. Matthew.
I think this is a touch high. I mean, it's a great matchup. I love Blake. I love Andre Drummond for DFS. I want all the Pistons against Atlanta, but asking him to get to 30 might be a touch too much. We have him projected for 27 or so at Fantasy Labs. I don't believe he cracked the 30-point plateau in either of his first 2 games versus the Hawks this season. So I do think it's an appealing spot. I'm definitely still interested in Griffin, but this line is just a touch too high.
All right, Jules, what about you?
Well, not only did Griffin not crack 30 in either of his 2 matchups against the Hawks this season, he has 21 points combined in those 2 games. So he's averaging 10.5 points per game against the Hawks. Now, obviously, we expect him to improve upon that number. That's kind of a fluke number right there, but 30 is really high. It's about 4 points per game above his season average. It's just a tough spot to say that he's going to go out and get 30, especially with blowout potential maybe in this game. I don't know if I necessarily would bet the under, but I definitely would not bet the over in this scenario.
Mike Conley's over-under is 20.5 points tonight. He hasn't hit that mark in 3 straight games, going 12, 11, 15. So Chaser Fade, the trend continues, and Conley is held under 20.5 points, Jules.
Yeah, well, there's a reason he hasn't hit that mark in 3 games, and it's because the Grizzlies aren't playing him as much anymore. Not only is Memphis in tank mode here down the stretch, but their pick goes to the Boston Celtics if it does not land in the top 8. So Memphis wants to make sure that they get down there and those protections don't come into play and they land their pick somewhere in that top 8. So down the stretch here with a guy that they've paid so much money, a veteran like Conley, that they definitely reached out and talked to teams about trading like they did with Marc Gasol. They just couldn't find a suitor, but they want to protect his health. They want to ensure their losses down the stretch. Guys like DeLon Wright at 3,700 have become really nice value plays, eating up some of Conley's minutes. He's just not going to get the run to get this point over.
Matt, you agree? He's just not going to get the minutes out there?
Yeah, this is another tough one for me. I mean, Julian makes some great points. I am going to go with the over, though, just because I really don't know who else the Grizzlies are going to turn to tonight. They traded away Gasol. Half of their roster is injured. No Valanciunas, no Jaren Jackson, no Kyle Anderson. Like, they may not want to play Mike Conley 35 minutes, but they may not have a choice. And I think that anytime you can, buy low, buy against public perception, which is kind of what you're going to be able to do tonight with Conley coming off of a few bad games in a row, I think that's something that you want to do, especially considering the matchup against the Clippers who play fast and don't play a ton of defense.
One more block to go. You two hang tight because we're bringing back Pierce and Adam looking at showdown picks. But first, this little Oscars treat from Pat Mayo.
I'm going to take Roma, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
So we're both going to pick Roma for best pitcher?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds boring to say. It's not what I'm going to cheer for Black Panther to win, but I'm going to pick Roma.
Yeah, I'm actually going to bet the favorite at 20-1.
I think Black Panther's got a better chance to win than the favorite does. I mean, the Black Panther has already won the SAG award. I mean, that tells you that it has the potential legs to win a vote in a crowded category like this. I think it could go over the top.
The favorites piled up all the other Guild Awards, and it had a pretty good showing at the SAGs in terms of overall nomination.
Sure.
But it was weird. But it wasn't nominated for Best Ensemble, which I thought was just absolutely shocking. But I guess they don't consider 3 people in an ensemble.
Well, unless you also consider those ducks.
Yeah, I guess the Ducks. And there's someone in the movie who was unrecognized that really should have been. We'll get to that when we get to supporting actor. But some more political stuff here. Like the Green Book, it has that working against it. The favorite just seems to be, like, outside of it being a Mexican production, and even though there's the revolution going on in the movie in the background, Roma's a pretty apolitical movie by and large.
I thought so too. Yeah.
So it's not really.
It's a safe choice. I think it'd be a very safe choice.
Yeah, it's not really projecting any politics onto it. But then you have Black Panther and Black Klansman and Vice. Those three that, if you want to talk about a movie that's like a socially conscious movie, I think that those three, Vice isn't going to win. So then you're between Black Klansman, you're between Black Panther. That is something that could push Black Panther over the top, I think, is that, like, hey, this is a movie, if we're going to talk about Roma being a movie made by an all-Mexican production team, by a Mexican director, you're talking about Black Panther, the first real superhero movie that has an all-black cast, all-black film crew, all the way down the line. Like, there's some people that if they win some of these technical categories, they'll be the first black person to win in, 45 years, or the first person ever to win in some of these categories. So if you get behind it that way, maybe you're right. The 25-1, maybe the move is to bet the favorite and Black Panther.
Yeah, I mean, all that you've said is true. Plus, you add that to this is their first opportunity to award the superhero genre in the Best Picture category, which is like the lifeblood of Hollywood right now. Like, you add all those things together in a year of pretty weak movies overall. I think there's a strong case to be made for it.
I guess the one thing is, and we see this a lot with the Oscars, and it almost bleeds into the Glenn Close sort of thing, is the Academy's not real keen on giving a movie its due the first time around. Like, the nomination, they might feel that's good enough. Now, 15 years from now, we'll give a comic book movie Best Picture. Like, they have a long history of doing something like that.
Maybe, but you just made the case that the demographics are younger and more diverse, and that the voters don't approach things in the same way. So.
Well, my final point on the political ramifications of this, I think that if there's going to be a black wave vote of getting behind something that's uplifting and important for the movie business, I think that works more in the case of Black Panther than Black Klansman, and just the actual story of the movie and what it's trying to say isn't just something that pertains to black culture. It's something that pertains to the entire world.
Sure.
I thought that was a really important part of that movie.
Yeah, and it had $900 million or something. Was it the second most popular movie of the year after Venom or something? It was crazy.
But the flip side of all of that, so we talk about, is a Mexican thing an anti-Trump vote? Is stuff going to work against Green Book? Are you going to have a black block of the voting academy that's going to go for Black Panther or Black Klansman? I mean, lefties are going to love Vice, but it's just not good enough that's going to win. The favorite, the big underlying thing of why I think it could win is that it's the only one of these movies that just stars women.
Yeah, sure.
I think that's a very underrated part of its chances.
There's a strong case to be made for that, for sure. But again, I just think in this crop that it wasn't, because it's not as popular, I don't think there's any momentum for that movie in the same way that you could see momentum for it. That's the way I look at it.
It's won a lot of awards.
The movie itself hasn't, though. People doing stuff for the movie had.
Yeah, but that's where you're going. I mean, it ended up winning Best British Film at the BAFTAs.
Great. Okay. Fair. Fine.
So it's picked off.
Listen, you want to bet the favorite. You're going to bet the favorite. I appreciate you're going to do that. It's like you trying to convince me that this is the week Luke List is finally going to win. You don't need to convince me. I know you think this, so we can put a pin in it.
It's a Friday in the association, 9 NBA games tonight, and we're here to identify some players you should avoid. Brendan Glasheen here for Levitan's Fadeaway with Adam Levitan. Kawhi Leonard faces his old team, the Spurs, in the 6. What makes you woeful about playing Kawhi tonight?
Yeah, Kawhi just doesn't strike me as someone who has vengeance in his heart. These two teams played back in January. Kawhi only took 13 shots, only had 1 rebound. Since then, obviously, the Raptors have added Marc Gasol, added Jeremy Lin. And this is kind of just a man matchup, I think, against the Spurs. So a lot working against Kawhi here. I think he'll go over-owned as people try to get on the revenge narrative.
Bulls Magic features 2 non-playoff teams in the East, but worth touching on since you're fading this game's priciest player.
Yeah, the Bulls continue to talk up Otto Porter, wanting to get him more looks. We know Chris Dunn is healthy now. We know Zach LaVine is healthy now. But the big thing with Lauri Markkanen is he was hovering around 7,000, 6,700, 6,900 for much of the time before the All-Star break, and was really a good play at that price. Now he's 8,100, and that's a lot to ask for a player like Lauri Markkanen. I think he's just gotten a little bit too expensive.
Last one, Nikola Jokic, 10,100, fourth highest on the slate as he and the Nuggets visit the Mavs. Why are you down on him?
Yeah, Nuggets are getting really healthy and really deep. I mean, Gary Harris is healthy. Will Barton is healthy. Jamal Murray is healthy. And we saw while those guys were hurt, Monty Morris and Malik Beasley need time. These guys can really play. Isaiah Thomas is even back healthy, likely to have a bench role in this game for the Nuggets. So the Nuggets just don't need Nikola Jokic to completely dominate, to touch the ball in every possession, to shoot, to create all this offense. They just have a really, really good team. And on top of that, the center position on DraftKings almost every night is so deep. So I like to be picky there as well.
That's Levitan's fadeaway. Thanks, Levy.
All right, good luck.
Sending you off into the weekend with something to remember us by. It's a quad box. Julian, Pierce, Adam, and Matthew.
So we've gathered you all here for showdown picks, Jazz and Thunder tonight. Both Russell Westbrook and Paul George have had 80-point fantasy performances recently. That's a lot. Which guy has the better chance to hit that mark tonight, though, Julian?
Yeah, 11 straight triple-doubles. Give me Russell Westbrook. Look, Paul George is having a great season, but I don't want to rely on him knocking down threes at the rate that he has been so far. I know Westbrook has struggled a little bit in a couple of games against Utah this season, but the way that he's playing right now, even with Dennis Schroeder returning to the lineup after missing a couple games for the birth of a child, I just think Westbrook has the safer floor, and in this case, who's more capable of hitting the 80? It's got to be Westbrook. He has way more of those in his game log than Paul George does.
Matt, you think Westbrook is a sure thing?
Yeah, for sure. He's definitely much safer. I mean, if you look at Paul George, he's been playing inflated minutes because of the injury to Schroeder and because of the injury to Jeremy Grant. Both guys should be back in the lineup tonight. So, George should return to his usual 37, 38 minutes instead of having to play over 40. And Westbrook has just been flat out one of the best fantasy players over the past month. Like, he's averaged 1.85 DraftKings points per minute over that time frame. Nobody else on the slate can top that mark. So, yeah, give me Westbrook for sure out of these two.
Any chance you're going with Paul George, Adam?
No, and I think that I completely agree, despite the fact that Westbrook looks like he went to the Emerson School of Basketball shooting, obviously, but he fills up the stat sheet wherever he possibly can. And to me, I think Julian's point was perfect. Like, how can you rely on Paul George hitting the number of threes week in, week out, game in, game out that he has been? He's been playing at an incredible level, and he's my pick right now for the MVP of this league because of just how well he's played this year. But give me Westbrook. He's just more consistent across the entire board, much more reliable in terms of each and every category. So give me Westbrook.
I will play you one-on-one any day of the week, and I will.
Yeah, well, maybe you should have invited some of us to this football game you got going on tomorrow.
Shoot.
I'd love to see the video. I'm going to talk to Julian after the show about putting some of these bets down for these over-unders and things. We'll contact that, and I want video of this.
Fair enough.
Yeah, you will. All right.
The draft is a thing of the past now. It's too late. Sorry.
Okay. Westbrook or Paul George, Pierce?
We also get that video with some yakety sax playing. If the editing team can put that on there, that'd be nice to watch. I'm sure it's going to be a disaster of a game. I'd say play on both. I mean, if you look at who you're going to pay up for on the slate, I'm not really crazy about paying for the Jazz, and they can both have really good games. They're right. Russell Westbrook stuffs the stat sheet, and he's more likely to get a bunch of random fantasy points, which he does. George is the better player, but we don't care about the better player. We just want the random stats.
All right, Pierce, Donovan Mitchell is the most expensive Jazz player. Does he deserve to be more pricey than Rudy Gobert?
I don't think so. I think Gobert is the better play just based on the floor and the more likelihood to get to the points in this matchup, especially against Steven Adams, who's been absolutely terrible. So the rebound should go in Gobert's favor. And if Mitchell has a cold night, which he's accustomed to doing, he's not really knocking down points every single night. He's going to have a much lower floor, and I don't even see the ceiling, so I'd rather take the safe pick with Gobert. I'm not really crazy about that either, though.
What do you think, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, complete agreement across the board. I think Gobert is the safer play here. Mitchell has had too many of these off-shooting nights. He's really, to me, taken a step back this season. I think Gobert is going to get you the blocks. He's going to get you some steals here and there. He's going to obviously dominate the boards. Give me Gobert, but I don't like either play that much tonight. If I had to pick one, though, give me Gobert.
All right, Mitchell or Gobert, Matthew?
Yeah, I like Gobert. I like him much more than these other guys. But for sure, I like him more than Donovan Mitchell. I mean, it's just simple math. He averages more fantasy points per minute, and he plays roughly the same amount of minutes as Mitchell every single night. So, yeah, I'll definitely take him at lower salary.
Should Mitchell be pricier than Gobert, Jules?
I'm with the guys here on Gobert. I think he's a better play. I think he should be priced higher than Mitchell. Mitchell's just been kind of all over the place this season. For me, after I slot Westbrook into my lineup, Gobert's probably the second guy that I would look to just in terms of this showdown slate. I think he's in a really solid spot that he's not getting enough credit for.
All right, who are you fading from this contest, Matt? Someone you just want to stay away from?
For me, it's going to be Paul George. I know Pierce mentioned jamming him and Westbrook into the same lineup. I just don't see how that is mathematically possible, especially if you want to put one of them at captain. Otherwise, you're looking at, the Raul Netos and Abdel Naders of the world for the rest of your team. So I'm fine with taking a stand on Westbrook over Paul George and hoping for the best.
Pierce, where are you going on this one?
Well, I'm going to stay away from Mitchell because if you pay for Mitchell, then that means you're not going to get Paul George and Russell Westbrook. It's going to make it tough to get either one of them. The way that you make it work is you can't captain them. And I know people want to captain Westbrook or captain George, but if you put them both in the regular spot and take a little bit more value at captain, then you could squeeze them both in and not stick with the Netos and the
It's still really tough. You're still leaving, $6K salary-wise essentially per slot, and you have to pick a captain. So I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's very, very tough.
Jules, who are you fading?
Well, it's just as hard if you put him as your captain too, though.
Well, I wouldn't. I'm not a captain expensive guy. Like that's not part of my plan usually.
Not your play.
That's why we like you guys, man. Everyone's a little different.
Yeah.
That's okay. You got to accept who you are.
True that. Julian.
Yeah, for me, it's probably going to be Donovan Mitchell. If I'm starting off with Westbrook and going to Gobert, it's probably going to be Paul George and Donovan Mitchell, honestly. But if I was able to, I would play Paul George between the two. So Mitchell is kind of the expensive guy on this slate that I don't really want any part of. I just don't like the matchup for him. I don't like the inconsistencies for him. So out of the four, high-priced stud plays on this slate, I like the other three much better.
Adam, who you fading?
I completely agree. I think of these four guys, Mitchell's the one guy that could go into a slump and have you in a really off night. The other three guys have much better matchups, are matchup proof to me tonight. So Mitchell is the one that I'd be fading if I had to choose someone.
Quick DK Live update for you guys. Luka Doncic has been ruled out for tonight's game. Steph, do we want to get reaction on this, or do we want to continue with showdown picks? Just tell me in my ear.
What?
Waiting on it.
Wait.
All right, we'll keep it on here. Adam, who would you captain in this showdown?
Yeah, for me, it's Westbrook. I'm going to pay up for the stud here, the most consistent guy on the slate. Give me Westbrook.
Jules.
Westbrook, and just to touch on that news, Tim Hardaway Jr., really good play now with Luka Doncic ruled out.
That's exactly why I was going to ask you a follow-up question. Good job, Julian.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I can read your mind, Emerson.
I missed you there. What'd you say?
I said I can read your mind.
Oh, that's cool.
That's absolutely not true.
Set you up for that one.
Okay. Matt, who would you captain?
Ricky Rubio at captain for me, and Tim Hardaway Jr. 15% usage rate increase with the Mavericks with Doncic and Harrison Barnes off the court. 15%.
All right, Pierce, what can you add to the Doncic news, and then tell me who you're going to captain in the showdown?
Well, I'm not going to add anything to the Doncic news. And Westbrook, if you want Westbrook and George, you got to get a little cute. So I'm going to go with Derek Favors. I know it's out there, but he's getting 1.4 fantasy points per minute over the last 2 weeks. If he can get that kind of production in 20, 25 minutes, then I should be good to go with those other two guys on my team.
Well, last but certainly not least, we need your slate approved picks. Pierce, who is getting your stamp of slate approved?
This is the whole slate, right?
The whole entire 9-game slate. You better prepare.
The whole thing.
Andre Drummond. It's Drummond. No brainer.
I don't know.
You don't want to tell us why? Okay. Matt.
We talked about it earlier.
Yeah, it's fine. Matt, who are you going with?
Oh man, this is one of the hardest slates of the year. Literally, so many good value plays to choose from. I'm going with the new news though, and I'm going with Tim Hardaway Jr. Too cheap. The offense basically running through him for the entire night.
Adam.
Yeah, I'm going value too. We talked about him earlier, Dario Saric. No Towns, no Georgie Jang. Give me Saric, whose usage has been way up over the last couple of weeks. I think he has a big night tonight for the T-Wolves.
Take us home, Julian.
I love the Dallas value in Hardaway Jr. I love going after the Minnesota value with Towns out. I'll just highlight some other value. No bigs playing for Memphis. Joakim Noah, only $3,800. He just had a 42 DK point game. He's a really good value at center.
Awesome work, guys. Julian, real quick, Team Aiden or Team Jesse in the flag football game? Quick.
Yeah, so we have Team Aiden slightly favored right now, so I got to go with the favorite in this pick. But the player props are really where the value's at.
Can't hear you.